While signing executive orders on the day of his inauguration, President Donald Trump said he plans to impose 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico starting February 1st. Joining us now is Perrin Beatty, former cabinet minister of 7 major federal departments for the Canadian government, also the former Canadian Chamber of Commerce CEO. Thank you for being here.
Glad to be with you.
So February 1st is fast approaching. Is this a realistic date, and should Canada be prepared for an all-out trade war?
I think we have to assume that Donald Trump is serious. He keeps on coming back to that February 1st date and repeating it. And it'd be very hard for him, I think, at this point to back off, notwithstanding the fact that he's not necessarily known for his consistency.
He was supposed to be receiving a report on this around April. Why February 1st and not later on?
We have no idea. The first that we heard was that he had commissioned the report to be delivered to him by the 1st of April, and that would have been better for Canada because it would have given us more time to sort out our political vacuum that we have at home at the present time. Then the very same evening, as he's signing executive orders, he throws out the February 1st date, which he's come back to now several more times. There's an Alice in Wonderland quality about this, about first the sentence, then we'll have the hearing.
Well, some experts are suggesting Canada should push to reopen the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement negotiations early instead of the scheduled review next year. Do you think this will help Canada better deal with the tariff threats?
Well, there was a report in the Wall Street Journal that this was part of Mr. Trump's strategy here, was to force an early renegotiation of CUSMA. We just don't know. The reason for this has been changing. Initially, he was going to impose tariffs because of the border. He was concerned about fentanyl and about illegal immigrants crossing the border. Then there was the fictitious $200 billion trade deficit with Canada. Then there was the report in the Wall Street Journal that he wanted to reopen CUSMA early. We simply don't know. And the challenge here is we're dealing with goalposts that are constantly shifting. There is no clear bottom line here. We don't know what it takes to satisfy him at this point. And as a result, we're going to have to wait and see what he does and tailor our response to that.
And as we wait and see, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says if this goes through, Canada will retaliate by responding with tariffs on the U.S. Is retaliating the right move?
We have no choice but to respond, but we need any response we have needs to be intelligent. The whole reason why we've been working for the last several decades to reduce barriers to trade is that both sides lose when you have tariffs in place or other non-tariff barriers to trade between countries. Mr. Trump's tariffs are going to hurt American consumers and American businesses, and counter tariffs by us will have a price as well. The difficulty is that Mr. Trump is going to leave us in a position where we have no choice but to respond. The key for us is to make sure that we tailor our response in a way that is intelligent. We're dealing with asymmetrical warfare here, and we need to look at how we can inflict the maximum amount of pain on Mr. Trump and his supporters and the minimum amount of pain on ourselves.
Well, on that note, then, what are some intelligent ways to respond?
Well, if you looked at his inauguration, there was $1 trillion worth of tech oligarchs standing behind him there as he was being sworn in. They've paid a lot of money and they've spent a lot of their dignity to curry favor with the president and to buy access to his ear. I think that might be a starting point to make it clear to them that if they want to do business in Canada, they need to recognize the fact that their business is at risk as a result of this. But let's be tailored in what we're doing. Let's not get into a competition about who can be more hairy-chested here. We need to look at what we can do to, first of all, head off tariffs or to get them lifted if they are imposed. But if not, then to look at how do we respond to increase the pressure on the U.S. administration without doing damage to ourselves.
And of course, you're talking about Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Mark Zuckerberg all at the inauguration. So 75% of our country's trade goes into the U.S. How do you see this impacting Canadians?
There's no question that it's bad news. The whole reason all 3 countries have prospered as a result, first of all, of NAFTA and then of CUSMA. And we went to great efforts to put this agreement in place, an agreement that Mr. Trump in his first term said was the best trade agreement ever. And so it was win, win, win. Mr. Trump now takes the position that any agreement has to be win-lose, that he has to win and everybody else has to lose. So the damage to the Canadian economy will be serious if he goes ahead and does this. And it means then that we need to take a fresh look at where we are. It could be that January 20th, 2025 should be the Canadian Independence Day, where we say that never again will we allow ourselves to become this vulnerable, that we'll focus on getting the economic fundamentals right, on growing our economy and on increasing our resilience and our ability to have choices, and also looking at what we can do to shift more of the response for the defense of Canada to Canada.
Well, shifting gears a bit now, Perrin, Trump is also pushing NATO member countries to reach the 2% GDP goal. You're the former Minister of National Defense. Do you think meeting this requirement will put more strain on Canada's economy? What are your thoughts on that?
There's a real question about the ability to do it, to actually spend the money, even if we had it in the short term, in that the Department of National Defense lapses funds that are made available to it because they've been neglected for so long, and they have a difficulty even absorbing the increases that are planned now to take us to 2%. The 5% figure is arbitrary. There's no question that both NATO and Canada have underspent on defense in the last many years, and that we need to improve that. But it's a figure that Mr. Trump has picked off the ceiling. The real issue is, how do we improve the effectiveness of our defense forces in NATO, and how do we in Canada improve the effectiveness of the Canadian forces? To do that, we need to have a strategic approach to this that allows us to grow it in a way that makes sense. Let's not kid ourselves about what the motive is here on Mr. Trump's part. This is not somebody who's gone out of his way to talk about what a threat Russia and China pose to the West. He's talked much more favorably about Mr. Xi and Mr. Putin than he has about the Western leaders. But what he would like to do is to offload onto other countries some of the burden the US is carrying today for the common defense. That's understandable. But the other is, he wants to drive hundreds of billions of dollars into US defense firms. And it's as much an economic development project for him as it is anything related to defense.
Okay, well, February 1st is fast approaching, as I mentioned, so we will see how this ever-evolving situation pans out. Perrin, thanks for your time today. That's former Canadian Chamber of Commerce CEO Perrin Beatty.